Hello, and thank you for joining me today for today's installment of the Daf 23, and I'm doing Arakhin of the Talmud Bami, the Babylonian Talmud. I'm using Steinsaltz publication. So let's dive straight into it. Starts off on the 23, starts off with the Mishnah. In the case of one who consecrates his property, Magdish Nechasov, if one consecrates all of his property and then divorces his wife, she may not collect payment of a marriage contract until he vows that the benefit from her is forbidden to him, lest they collude against the temple treasury. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, by the fact that generally follows Rabbi Yeshua in their disputes, as Rav Huna accepts the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer in the continuation of the discussion. Initially, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel rules in accordance with his opinion that the misses he touched with Yom Tov. Some commentaries, as for the Rambam, the Likutei Halacha, maintain that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, that there is no need for the husband to vow that the benefit from his wife is forbidden, as he may request the dissolution of his vow consecration, as indicated in the continuation of the discussion. And that's from the Rambam Sefer Haflah, Hilchos Avichim Urachmim 7:17, Noshim Hilchot Yishud 17:10, Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer 102:8. And there was the outstanding debt of the marriage contract of his wife, for whose repayment one's property is liened. Rabbi Eliezer says, when he divorces her, he shall vow that benefit from her is forbidden to him. This is to prevent collusion, by which he divorces her, she collects payment from the consecrated property, and then he remarries her. Rabbi Yeshua says, he did not do so. On the similar note, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, even in the case of the guarantor of a woman for a marriage contract, in the case of a guarantor who is responsible for payment of a marriage contract of a woman, if the husband divorces his wife and has no means to pay the marriage contract, the wife may not collect from the guarantor until the husband vows, based on the consent of the public, that benefit from her is forbidden to him. This is in order to prevent collusion between the husband and wife against the guarantor. Rambam Sefer Noshim Hilchot Yishud 29, Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer 102:7. And the husband was divorcing her and could not pay the debt, the husband shall vow that benefit from her is forbidden to him, lest he and his wife engage in collusion. Kenuya. What's kenuya? Collusion from the Greek konoia, which refers to a partnership or joint ownership and the like, and collect payment from the property of the guarantor, and then the husband will remarry his wife. The Mishnah teaches that there is a dispute between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua with regard to a case where one consecrates his property and then divorces his wife. And the Gemara asks, with regard to what principle do they disagree? The Gemara explains Rabbi Eliezer holds that a person will engage in collusion against even the temple treasury, and for this reason he divorces his wife. The required vow serves to prevent such a possibility. And Rabbi Yeshua holds that a person would not engage in collusion against the temple treasury. Gemara asks, but if so, consider that which Rav Huna says. If a person on his deathbed, shechiv mara, a person on his deathbed is granted exceptional powers to assign his property to others without many of the requirements that such a transfer ordinarily entails. The sages recognize the unique physical and emotional state of a dying person, and we are concerned that with the possibility that he might become distraught that his final wishes will not be fulfilled. To alleviate this concern, the sages rule that an all deathbed gift is considered to have been signed, sealed, and delivered. Therefore, the stated desire of one on his deathbed for his property to be transferred takes effect, even if witnesses were not formally appointed and an official act of acquisition was not performed. Consecrated all of his property and said, so-and-so has 100 dinars that I owe him in my possession. Only person who consecrated his property is not incredible afterward to say, so-and-so has 100 dinars in my possession, or these vessels belongs to so-and-so, lest they collude against the temple treasury. If he was on his deathbed and said, so-and-so has 100 dinars in my possession, or the two belongs to so-and-so, he is deemed credible, as one would not lie on his deathbed for the benefit of others. Rambam Sefer Haflah, Hilchot Avichim Urachmim 7:18-19, Shulchan Aruch 255:3. same as incredible, as there is a presumption that the person does not engage in collusion against temple territory. Let's just say that Rav Huna stated this halacha with regard to a matter that is subject of a dispute between the Tanaim. The Gemara responds, no, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua disagree whether or not one colludes against temple territory only with regard to a healthy person. But with regard to a person on his deathbed, if such a person does not engage in collusion against temple territory, what is the reason? Since he will soon die, he does not stand to gain anything from a statement, and the person sins only for his own benefit, not for the benefit of others. Some say that in the case of a healthy person, everyone agrees on the question of whether or not a person would engage in collusion against temple territory, i.e. they agree that one must be concerned that a person may engage in collusion. And here they disagree with regard to a vow administered in public, e.g. a vow administered by the court. One sage, Rabbi Yeshua, holds that such a vow has the option of nullification. Consequently, there is no use in requiring the husband to take a vow even in public, as the halachic authority can later dissolve it. On one side, Rabbi Eliezer holds that such a vow does not have the option of nullification. Therefore, the court administers a vow in public to prevent collusion. And if you wish, say instead, everyone agrees that a vow administered in public has the option of nullification. On here, they disagree with regard to a vow administered based on the consent of the public. The footnote says, Neder sheha huda barabim al das rabim. Whether one vows in private or in public, if he regrets taking the vow, he may request that it be dissolved. A vow based on the consent of the public may never be dissolved except for the sake of performing a mitzvah. This halacha is in accordance with the ruling of Ameima on the Gemara on Gittin 36b, Rambam Sefer Flah Hilchah Shivut 6a Shulchan Aruch Yodea 228.3. When one vow is based on the consent of the public, their agreement is required in order to dissolve the vow. Since it is essentially impossible that the entire public will arrive at a consensus, in part such a vow cannot be dissolved. That's responded to Rav Haigon. Some commentators add, even if it was theoretically possible to arrive at a consensus, the vow cannot be dissolved, as members of the public did not actually take the vow themselves. And that's the Rambam Shpar on Gittin 36b, cited in Bein Tam, also the Ritva on Gittin 36b. I.e., when the court says to the husband, you are taking a vow that benefit from your wife has been to you based on our consent. According to Rabbi Eliezer, there is no option of notification for such a vow, and therefore it is effective to prevent collusion. Whereas Rabbi Yeshua maintains that even such a vow can be nullified and is therefore ineffective in preventing collusion. The Gemara asks, but if so, consider that which Ameima says. A vow that was taken in public has the option of nullification. If it was taken based on the consent of the public, it does not have the option of nullification. Let us say that Meimah stated this halacha with regard to a matter that is the subject of a dispute between the Tanaim. And furthermore, Rabbi Yeshua says in the Mishnah that a husband need not take a vow if his reason is that such a vow is ineffective. He should have stated, is it ineffective? Rather, here they disagree with regard to one's ability to request a dissolution of a vow involving consecrated property. A consecration performed in error is ineffective. Accordingly, just as one may request the dissolution of a standard vow, he may also request the dissolution of a vow of consecration. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Beit Hillel and Rabbi Yeshua Rambam Sefer Flah Hilchah Zavichim Barachim 634 Sidkat of Mishnah there and Hilchah Nadav 4:6. Rabbi Eliezer holds that one may not request a dissolution of a vow or consecrated property. Accordingly, there is a concern that the husband might collude with his wife by divorcing in order to extract the consecrated property from the temple treasury, as he has no other means of releasing the property. In contrast, Rabbi Yeshua maintains that such a vow may be dissolved, and therefore there is no reason for the husband to collude with his wife. The Gemara adds, and likewise talking about it, in the case of one who consecrates his property, and there is an outstanding debt of the marriage contract, of his wife upon him. Rabbi Eliezer says, when he divorces her, he shall vow that benefit from it is forbidden to prevent collusion. Rabbi Yeshua says, he need not do so. Rabbi Elazar's son of Rabbi Shimon said, this statement of Rabbi Eliezer is the same as the statement of Beit Shammai, and this statement of Rabbi Yeshua is the same as the statement of Beit Hillel. As Beis Shammai say, consecration that one performed in error is effective as consecration. Consequently, one cannot request the dissolution of his consecration due to circumstances that unfold on the ground that he did not mean to make the vow, so it's too late. The consecration has been made. And Beis Hillel say consecration that one performed in error is not consecration, and therefore one may request the dissolution of his consecration. This is a clear machlokes between Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says that it's effective as consecration, even if it was an error, and Beis Hillel says the opposite. If it's performed an error, it is not consecration, and therefore the solution of consecration can be requested. The Mishnah teaches, on the similar note, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said that even in the case of a guarantor for a woman for a marriage contract, he vows that benefit from her is forbidden to him, unless he and his wife engage in collusion. The Gemara relates that Moshe bar Adzrei was the guarantor for a marriage contract of his daughter-in-law, and Rav Huna, his son, was a Torah scholar and was hard-pressed for money. Rabbi said, is there no one who will advise Rav Huna that he should divorce his wife, and that she should claim a marriage contract from her father, the guarantor of the marriage contract, and that he should then return her and marry her, and in this manner they will obtain money? Rabbi said to Abai, but we learned in the Mishnah that in such a case he shall vow a benefit from her forbidden term. If so, Rav Huna cannot remarry her. And then the Gemara explained that Abai would argue, is that to say that anyone who divorces in court, let Rav Huna divorce his wife outside the court, so that he will not be forced to take a vow, and will therefore be allowed to remarry her. The Gemara relates that ultimately it was revealed that Rav Huna was a priest, which means that if he divorced his wife, he would have been prohibited from remarrying her. Abai said of this revelation, this is an example of saying that poverty follows the poor, i.e. it is difficult to remove a poor person from a state of poverty. The Gemara asks, and did Abai actually say this? Doesn't Abai say who is a wily wicked person? In the case of where one says my property is hereby given to so and so, and after him it is given to a different person, after him it is given to a third person. The halacha is when the first beneficiary dies, the second one acquires the property, and when the second beneficiary dies, the third one acquires it. The first beneficiary sold the property or gave it as a gift. The second and third beneficiaries do not receive the gift, with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel inserted 21b. One who advised the first beneficiary to sell the property is called an evil person. Rabbi Sefer Kenyan Hilchot Zizkiah Umatana 12:9 Shulchan Aruch Mishpat 248:3. This is one who advises another to sell a property that he received from someone who stipulated that the property should pass to the second beneficiary upon the death of the first. And this is in accordance with the ruling of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who maintains that the sale is valid and the second beneficiary may not remove the property from the possession of the buyer. If a buyer considers this individual as wicked for advising one to act against the intention of a benefactor, how could he suggest that Rav Huna should extract money from the guarantor in the above case? The Gemara answers, when one is a guarantor for his son, it is different. It is prohibited to advise a husband to divorce his wife so that she will collect payment of a marriage contract from the guarantor and to remarry her afterward. Lest the husband refrain from vowing that deriving benefit from her is forbidden to him, thereby enabling them to engage in collusion. Nevertheless, if the husband's father was the guarantor of the marriage contract, and the husband was a Torah scholar who was hard pressed for money, and the father does not provide for him, it is permitted to ask the husband to act in such a manner. Very interesting. Shulchan Aruch Ibn Ezra 102:8. And he would forgive his son for acting in this manner, as the son will in any case inherit his property. And furthermore, when this is performed for the benefit of a Torah scholar, it is different. It is proper to assist him so that he may continue studying Torah. The Gemara objects, and thereby deduced that such a course of action is ineffective, as the guarantor of marriage contract is not legally responsible to pay the marriage contract. The Gemara assumes that the transaction with inconclusive consent achsmachta does not affect acquisition, i.e. one who commits to pay a future obligation that depends upon the fulfillment of specific conditions without performing an act of acquisition does not conclusively resolve to become obligated, and the transaction is invalid. Nevertheless, sages said that the guarantor of a debt does resolve to become responsible for payment, as a creditor loans money to a debtor based on the commitment of the guarantor. Baba Batra 173b, with regard to the guarantor of a marriage contract, Sayyid said that he does not become responsible as he committed only in order to facilitate the marriage and does not intend to become responsible. Additionally, the woman did not lose anything in exchange for which the guarantee would accept responsibility 23b. The Gemara responds, Moshe bar Azri was a guarantor accepted unconditional responsibility, a kablan. What's a kablan? Whereas an ordinary guarantor says to the creditor, lend money to so and so and I will give you, which places the onus of responsibility upon the debtor. The kablan says, give so and so and I will give you. Consequently, it's considered as though the kablan received money from the creditor and appointed the creditor an agent to transfer it to the debtor, and therefore the kablan accepts responsibility upon himself. Responsibility for the loan. The practical difference arises with regard to the collection of the payment in a case where the debtor has the means to pay. A creditor may not initially collect payment from an ordinary guarantor, but he may choose to do so from a kablan. With regard to the manner by which a kablan for a marriage contract becomes responsible, some comments explain it that he says to the wife, marry that man and I will give you this marriage contract, rather than say for Nashim Hilchot Yishut 79 Ramban. Others maintain that as the obligation of a marriage contract differs from the loan, and that the husband receives nothing from the wife, a guarantor cannot become responsible by verbal means. Rather, the Gemara is referring to a case where the husband gave her movable property to as collateral for a marriage contract, and the wife transferred it to the father in order for him to be a kablan for them, and the father and the wife subsequently returned to his son. Rashi here and Gittin 49b will be in negotiation more Hagar. Alternatively, after the wife seized the movable property from her husband, the father said to the wife, return it to him and I was responsible for the payment of the marriage contract. Rabbeinu Gershom Mohagola Rashba on Gittin 49b said in the Rash, citing Rashi, for payment of the marriage contract. The Gemara objects. This works out well according to the one who says that with regard to a kablan, even though the debtor has no property at the time of the loan, nevertheless the kablan is responsible for payment. But according to the one who said that the debtor has property, then the kablan is responsible. And if he does not have property, the kablan does not agree to become responsible for that payment. What can be said? The reason is that the guarantor does not resolve to become responsible unless he can recollect payment from the debtor, says Rashi. Others formulate the reason as follows: the guarantor resolves to accept responsibility for the chance that the debtor might be able to pay. He would not guarantee the loss of his own property, but accept responsibility in the case where the debtor clearly lacks the ability to pay. The Rambam and the Ramah on Bava Batra 174b. Since Rav Huna owned no property, how could payment of marriage contract be collected from Moshe bar Azrai? The Gemara responds, if you wish, say that Rav Huna had property at the time that his father accepted upon him to be a guarantor, and it became blighted. And if you wish, say instead that a father with regard to his son accepts no responsibility upon himself, even if his son owns no property. The Gemara cites the aforementioned dispute in detail. As was stated, everyone agrees that an ordinary guarantor of a marriage contract, the guarantor for a marriage contract or the additional sum included in it, is not responsible for payment, even if he performed an act of acquisition and even if the husband owns property. In a case where he was the guarantor for the marriage contract of his daughter-in-law, if he performed an act of acquisition, he is responsible for payment, even if his son owned no property, said the Torah. If the guarantor said to the wife, marry this man I will give to you, he's considered a kablan and responsible for the payment, even without performing an act of acquisition. Am I right? Some hold that any guarantor becomes responsible for payment if he performs an act of acquisition, and if he is considered responsible for the marriage contract of his daughter-in-law, even without doing, and he is considered responsible for the marriage contract of his daughter-in-law, even without doing so. And that's the Torah based on the Raven. Dave Nashim Hilchot Yishut 17 9 Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer 102.6. Does not result to become responsible for paying the marriage contract. Everyone also agree that a kablan for a creditor is responsible for paying the debtor's debt. By contrast, with regard to an ordinary guarantor of a debt owed to a creditor, if when a creditor lends money to his friend, the guarantor says, lend him the money and I will be a guarantor, he becomes responsible as a guarantor even without an act of acquisition. Therefore, if the debtor has no property, the creditor may collect payment from the guarantor. If the guarantor was a kablan, i.e. said to the creditor, give him the money and I will give you, the creditor may claim the payment from the kablan initially. That's in the Rambam Sefer Nashim Hilchot Yishud 17:9 Shulchan Aruch Osher Mishpat 129 to 15. And the kablan for the payment of the marriage contract, the sages disagree. There's one sage who says, if the debtor or the husband has property, then the guarantor becomes responsible. But if he does not have property, then he does not become responsible. And there's another sage that says, even though the debtor or husband does not have property, the guarantor becomes responsible for payment of the obligation. And the halacha in all of these cases is, even if the principal does not have property of his own, the guarantor still becomes responsible for paying the obligation, except for the case of an ordinary guarantor of a marriage contract, with regard to which, even though the husband has property of his own, when he draws up the marriage contract, the guarantor does not resolve to become responsible. What is the reason? He performs a mitzvah, i.e. he agrees to be a guarantor only so that the woman will consent to the marriage, but he does not actually resolve to become responsible. And furthermore, the woman did not lose anything. According to the Rashbam, Baba Batra 174b, these clauses comprise a single answer. The guarantor intended only to perform a mitzvah and not cause loss to the woman, in accordance with the principle that it is better for a woman to be married than to sit lonely like a widow. Other commentaries explain that the phrase, and the woman did not lose anything, is an independent reason for why the guarantor does not become responsible. A guarantor typically becomes responsible for financial loss incurred by the creditor, who lends money in reliance on the guarantor. By contrast, in this case, the woman loses nothing when the husband draws up the marriage contract. Rashi in 49b, Rabbeinu Doshim Mo Hagol on Baba Batra 174b. According to Tosfot in Gittin 150a, both reasons must be applicable for the guarantor not to be responsible. For example, if one commits to be a guarantor after the wedding, in which case he does not perform a mitzvah, or if the woman provided a dowry for the husband and therefore she lost money, the guarantor is responsible. In exchange for which the guarantor would not have a responsibility, as the husband did not borrow money from her. The Gemara relates that there was a certain man who sold his property, and later when he divorced his wife, he had no property with which to pay the marriage contract. The wife therefore sought to collect payment from the buyers. Rav Yosef, son of Rava, sent the case before Rav Papa. When a wife's marriage contract is paid by a guarantor, we learned in the Mishnah, and the husband vows that benefit from her is forbidden to him. Similarly, when she collects a marriage contract from consecrated property, we learned in the Mishnah that the husband takes such a vow. What is the halacha when she collects payment from the buyer? Lokeach, a buyer. If one sells his property and subsequently divorces his wife and is unable to pay a marriage contract, the wife may seize the property that was sold to the buyers. The husband is not required to vow that benefit from her is forbidden to him, and therefore he may remarry her. The wife may seize the property because the buyers were aware that there was a lien on the husband's property due to the marriage contract. Consequently, they were considered responsible for their own loss by purchasing the property. As the Rambam Sefer Nashim Hilchot Yishud 17 Shulchan Aruch Even Ezer 102:9. Papa said to him, should the Tana have continued reckoning cases like a peddler who announces all of his wares? Obviously, the halacha is the same in the case of a buyer, as the identical reasoning applies despite the fact that the Tana neglected to mention this case. Sages in Nahadea say, that which we learned in the Mishnah we learned. That which we did not learn in the Mishnah we did not learn. I.e., the husband does not need to make the vow when the payment of the marriage contract is collected from the buyers. Rav Moshiach said, what is the reading of the sage of Nahadea? Granted, when the payment of the marriage contract is collected from consecrated property, the husband must make the vow due to the importance of maintaining the profit of the temple treasury. In the case of the guarantor as well, the husband must make the vow, as the guarantor performed a mitzvah and the woman did not lose anything. I.e., the guarantor received nothing from the wife, and he nevertheless accepted responsibility for the payment of the marriage contract. The husband, therefore, vows in order that the other should not be discouraged from performing this mitzvah. But in the case of a buyer, since he knows that each and every married man has upon him the potential obligation to pay a marriage contract, why should he go and purchase a field from the husband when there's lien on due to the marriage contract? Since it is he who caused himself to lose out, it's unreasonable to prevent the husband from remarrying his wife merely for the benefit of the buyer. In the Mishnah, in the case of one who consecrated his property and there was an outstanding debt of the marriage contract of his wife, in the case of one who consecrated all of his property despite the outstanding obligation of the marriage contract or the debts written in the promissory note, neither the wife nor the creditor may collect payment from the consecrated property until it is redeemed, and the sanctity of the property uproots any prior lien. When the property is sold by the temple treasury and reverts to non-sacred status, creditor and wife may collect payment from the one who redeemed the property as there is still a lien on it, says the Ravid. How is the property redeemed? The wife and creditor take an oath that they have not yet received payment, as in any case when one seeks to collect payment from lien property that has been sold. The sale of the consecrated property is then proclaimed for 60 days, day and night, and the property is appraised according to the price one would be willing to pay for the field in order to be used to pay them for the marriage contract of a wife or a debt owed to a creditor. The property must be redeemed for at least 1 dinar, so people will not see the consecrated property can become non-sacred without redemption. Once the property is redeemed, the redeemer collects payment from the property on behalf of the creditor, of the wife or creditor, and that's from the Rambam Sefer Hilchot Arakhin 7:14-16. Rashi explains that property in which there is a lien does not become consecrated, i.e. no sanctity inheres in its value. Consequently, by right, the husband or the wife or creditor may collect payment directly from the temple treasury. Yet, in order that people should not mistakenly conclude that consecrated property can be returned to the state without redemption, the creditor lends 1 dinar to the debtor, with which he redeems the property. By contrast, according to the Rambam, this property attains sanctity that inheres in its value, and that sanctity overrides any prior liens while the property remains in the possession of the temple treasury. Therefore, the wife and creditor may not collect payment from the property as long as it belongs to the temple treasury. It is decreed for the benefit of the wife and creditor that the property may be redeemed for a very cheap price in order that it be used by the redeemer to pay the wife and creditor. And that's in the Rambam Sefer Hilchot Arakhin 7:14-16 and see the Radbaz. And of a creditor, the woman may not collect the payment of marriage contract from the temple treasury, nor may the creditor collect his debt. Rather, the one who redeems the property redeems. A Poda, the translation of the Mishnah follows the explanation of Rashi that the debtor or husband redeems the property with 1 dinar. Some commentaries maintain, based on the Jerusalem Talmud, that he may redeem it even with less than 1 dinar. Anyone may redeem the property in this manner if he so chooses, but assume that there is no reason for anyone else to do so. Yet other commentaries contend that this is referring to all people, as the Mishnah is speaking of a case where the consecrated property is worth more than the debt owed by the one who consecrated it. The Mishnah teaches that anyone may redeem the property for the value of the field minus the debt, and the entire field is redeemed in this manner. No redemption payment is necessary for the portion of the property equivalent to the debt. Because for the sheet to best assert in the Rosh for a cheap price in order to give the woman her marriage contract payment and the creditor's debt. For example, if one consecrated property worth 9,000 dinars, even in a case where a debtor owed 100 dinars and the consecrated property was worth 90, anyone may redeem the property in order to give it to a wife who might credit for debt. But if the debt was more than double the value of the property was not redeemed in order to give it to the wife or creditor. Rather, it's redeemed without specifying any purpose. Since it would have been redeemed in order to give it away, no one would redeem it. According to the Ravid, if the debt is more than double the value of the property, the field requires no redemption, as the consecration does not take effect, as the debts are paid with that property. In Rambam Sefer Hilchot Arakhin 7:16. And his debt was 10,000 dinars. There be no property redemption. The creditor lends an additional dinar to the debtor, and the debtor redeemed the property with that dinar in order to give the woman her marriage contract payment and the creditor's debt. The Gemara asks, why do I need the Mishnah to state that one who redeems? The question of the Gemara is understood differently in according to the very explanation of the Mishnah. According to Rashi, the Gemara is asking, since the property does not become sanctified, why must the field be redeemed at all? Why can't the wife and creditor collect payment directly from the temple treasury? Alternatively, the question is why the Mishnah states the one who redeems, formulation which indicates that there is no actual redemption in this case, says the Rambam. According to the Rambam, who maintains that property is in fact sanctified, the Gemara is asking, why doesn't the wife redeem the property herself with a small sum? That's in the case of Mishnah, see the Radbaz. Why isn't the property given direct to the creditor without redemption? The Gemara answers, this is due to the explanation of Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu says the property is redeemed so that people will not say that consecrated property exits to non-sacred status without redemption. The Mishnah teaches that if one consecrated property worth 9,000 dinars and debts 10,000 dinars, the creditor lends an additional dinar to the debtor for him to redeem the property. The Gemara notes the Mishnah is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. As the Torah of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, if his debt corresponds to the value of his consecrated property, then the debtor redeems the property in a manner prescribed in the Mishnah. But if the value of the consecrated property is not enough to cover the debt, he does not redeem. Vim lav ein apoda. According to Rashi, this means that the property may be redeemed only in accordance with its monetary value. Since the value of the property does not cover the debt owed, the creditor never intended to rely on this property to receive payment of the debt, and therefore no lien was placed upon it. Others explain that, as in any event, the creditor cannot receive payment of the entire debt for consecrated property. The sages require that the payment of the entire debt must be delayed until the debtor can procure payment in another manner. The Rambam states that due to the difference in value between the debt and the consecrated property, one can not proclaim that the property is redeemed in order to pay a debt. Alternatively, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is saying that the property need not be redeemed, rather the creditor may collect directly from the temple treasury. Second explanation of Rashi is arrived at Tosfot, citing to Sefta Arakhin 4:6. One reason for this is that the property does not become sanctified in such a case. Another such reason is that as the value of the property does not cover the debt, it does not have the appearance of an act of redemption, and therefore no one will mistakenly conclude that consecrated property reverts to non-sacred status without redemption. She tells what she also arrived at property in this manner. Instead, it must be redeemed in accordance with its value. The Gemara asks, according to the rabbis, what is the amount? Up to what amount may the property be redeemed in the manner described in the Mishnah? Rav Huna bar Yehuda says that Rav Shesha says the consecrated property must be worth at least half of the debt. If the property is worth less, it may be redeemed only in accordance with its monetary value. Although the sages said in 21a with regard to those obligated to pay valuations, the court repossesses their property. Chayev Arakhin Hamashkanin also, with regard to one who is obligated to pay valuation or assessments, the property is repossessed for that which he owes. All his property is sold, including land, garments, household tools, slaves, and animals. He is allowed to keep his phylacteries, his sandals, a bed to sit on, and a bed and sheep to sleep on. But if he is poor, he is given a bed and a straw mattress. See Baba Metzia 113b. 30 days of sustenance and clothing appropriate for him for 1 year was given to him, but they are not given to his wife or children. By the fact that he is required to clothe them and sustain them. Rambam Sefer Afra 3:14-15 and Sefer Mishpatim Melba 17 Shulchan Aruch 97:23 to pay their debt to the temple treasury. Nevertheless, the treasurer gives him permission to keep food sufficient for 30 days and garments sufficient for 12 months and a bed made of linen and his sandals and his phylacteries. The treasurer leaves these items for him, but he does not leave them for his wife or for his children. If the one obligated to pay was a craftsman, Haya Uman, if the court wishes to repossess the property of a craftsman, due to obligation of valuation and assessment, the court gives him 2 tools of each type. How so? If he was a carpenter, he's given 2 swords and 2 adzes. If he has many tools of one type and few of a second type, the tools of the first type are not sold in order to purchase tools of the second type, while he's given 2 tools of the first type and whatever he has from the second. That's in the Rambam Sefer Afra 3:17 Shulchan Aruch 97:23. The treasurer gives him permission to keep 2 tools of his craft. That is, 2 tools that may perform the same function, so that if one becomes faulty, he may continue working with the other. Accordingly, if the craftsman requires several tools for his craft, the treasurer allows him to keep 2 tools of each type, and that's from the Tiferet Yisrael. Of each and every type, e.g. for a carpenter, the treasurer gives him permission to keep 2 adzes, Mazadin. So it explains here what Adze is. Ma'azad. In the text of the Mishnah, as well as in many manuscripts, the letters of this word are transposed with the ayin preceding the sadi. Some came in and explained that a ma'azad is a type of axe with a wooden handle. Others maintain that it is a plane or chisel used to smooth wooden surface. There's a picture here of a carpenter's plane resembling this in the strike period. And that's the next bit. And two saws. Mergeua is saw, and there's two pictures here of Roman saw blades. Rabbi Eliezer says, if he was a farmer, the treasurer gives him permission to pair his oxen, to keep his pair of oxen with which he plows the field. If he was a donkey driver, the treasurer gives him permission to keep his donkey. If one had many tools of one type and few tools of the other type, e.g. 3 adzes and 1 saw, he may not say to the treasurer to sell one tool of the type where he has many and to purchase for him one tool of the type which he has few. Or the treasurer gives him 2 tools of the type which he has many, and he retains whatever he has of the type of which he has few. In contrast to one whose property is repossessed to pay valuations, from one who consecrates all his property, the treasurer takes the phylacteries. Ma'alan lo tefid lov. According to some commentaries, Ma'alan means that the treasurer seizes his phylacteries, and to be explained that Ma'alan refers to an appraisal. I.e. his phylacteries are appraised and it is his responsibility to borrow money in order to redeem them. See Tosfos Yom Tov and Tiferet Yisrael. They included in the category of all his property. And the Gemara asks, what is the reason that the treasurer leaves him with all the tools mentioned in the Mishnah? They will explain that the reason is that the verse states, and this goes on to the next daf, we just finished this sentence, this paragraph. If he will be too poor for your valuation, Leviticus 27:8, the word he who is interpreted as a variant of Havaya, existence or sustenance. In this manner, the verse can be read as an instruction to the treasurer, sustain him from that which he is obligated to pay for your valuation. And that's the end for today. I wish you a very good day. Peace in Israel and all the best. Bye.